Hello friends, and welcome once again to the amazing world of English literature. Today we are going to discuss a poem from your grade 8 textbook Poorvi chapter 1, A Concrete Example. So friends, I want you to close your eyes for just 5 seconds and picture a garden. What do you see? Open your eyes. How many of you saw green grass, colorful flowers, maybe some butterflies? That's what most of us imagine, right? Now, what if I told you about a garden filled with stones, not flowers, stones? Would you think that garden is beautiful? Today's poem is by Reginald Arkell, a British writer who had a wonderful talent for finding magic in ordinary moments. Let us step into Mrs. Jones's unusual garden. Here is the poem. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones, has a garden full of stones, a crazy path, a lily pond, a rockery, and just beyond, a sundial with a strange device, which Mrs. Jones thinks rather nice. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones, puts little plants between stones. They are so delicate and small, they don't mean anything at all. I can't think how she gets them in unless she plants them with a pin. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones, once asked me round to see her stones. We stood and talked about a flower for about quarter of an hour. Where is this lovely thing? I cried. You are standing on it, she replied. Very interesting and humorous poem, isn't it? And what a curious neighbor, Mrs. Jones. Before we dig deeper, no garden pun intended, let's get to know the man who introduced us to Mrs. Jones. The author, Reginald Arkell, lived from 1881 to 1959. He was an English writer, but here's what makes him interesting. He started as a lyricist. He wrote words for musicals in London's West End. That means he understood rhythm, he understood performance, he understood how to make words sing. Later in life, Arkell turned to poetry and to a subject he clearly loved, gardens. But Arkell wasn't interested in writing about perfect showpiece gardens. He was drawn to the quirky, the personal, the slightly odd. Think about it for a moment. In an age of rapid change, Arkell lived through 2 world wars. And yet he chose to write about gardens, about neighbors, about stones. Why? Perhaps because in a chaotic world, he found meaning in small, quiet things. And he invites us to do the same. This poem, like many of his, has gentle humor. It does not laugh at Mrs. Jones, it smiles with her. And that warmth is the key to understanding what Arkell is really saying. Now let us look at the poem more closely once again. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones, has got a garden full of stones. So we see this beautiful opening which has alliteration where the N sound repeats itself, next door neighbor, and my and Mrs. So there's a sweet rhythm to it. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones, has a garden full of stones. So right at the beginning, the poet establishes that it's a different kind of a garden. Instead of flowers or leaves, he mentions stones and then goes on, a crazy path, a lily pond, a rockery, and just beyond. So she's got a crazy path that is built of stones. She's also got a pond and a rockery. A rockery is a rock garden in which we have rock sculptures, stones put over each other, and an example of it is the rock garden in Chandigarh, which was designed by Mr. Neg Chand. If you haven't been to the rock garden in Chandigarh, when you go there, you must go. It's an amazing example of creativity and how to make best out of waste. Let's go on with the poem. A sundial with a strange device. What is a sundial? A sundial is like a pillar which is placed in full sun, so it casts its shadow. The shadow's length is dependent on what hour it is. When the sun is directly above, at midday, the shadow will be small. When the sun is far towards the horizon before the sunset, the shadow will be long, and so on. So she has got this in a garden, which Mrs. Jones thinks it's rather nice. So Mrs. Jones clearly has a personality. She devises things according to her taste. She's got taste. Second stanza. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones. So you see, this is a refrain. This is called a refrain. When one line repeats again and again, like in a song, it's called a refrain. And so this helps us remember and also adds to her personality. She's at the center of everything. So Mrs. Jones puts little plants between the stones. They are so delicate and small, they don't mean anything at all. So in between stones, you would also have seen in the rainy season, there's grass that sprouts out in between stones. There's small flowers, white flowers, yellow flowers that sprout up in between stones wherever there is little mud. So they are so delicate and small because there's very little space between the stones. The author says they don't mean anything at all. I can't think how she gets them in, and he also wonders how does she plant them unless she puts them with a pin. So of course she hasn't put them there with a pin. It is nature's beauty that whatever space is left, nature fills it. You would also see old walls here and there which have banyan trees growing on them. So nature does know how to reclaim its own space, and they're very hardy plants which can grow in very difficult circumstances. Let's see the last stanza. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones, once asked me around to see her stones. So the writer is invited. We stood and talked about a flower for quite a quarter of an hour. So for a long time, quarter of an hour, 15 minutes, the poet and Mrs. Jones talk about some kind of a flower and its beauty and its features, probably about what butterflies hover over them and so on. And then, where is this lovely thing? I cried. So then the poet, after discussing the white flower, let's say, says, oh, but where is it? You are standing on it, she replied. And this is tragicomic. They are talking about a flower and they are so small, like the writer has said earlier, that he is actually standing on it. So we need to be careful about little things and their beauty, and we need to value them. That's the message in this poem. Now let's talk about what's going on beneath the surface. There are three major themes that emerge. The first one, different perspectives on beauty. The speaker clearly thinks gardens should have flowers. That's the normal view. We all hold that view. But Mrs. Jones, she sees beauty in stones, in a crazy path, in a sundial. She has created something that reflects her own vision, not what others expect. And this, friends, raises a wonderful question. Who decides what is beautiful? Is beauty about following rules, or is it about seeing value where others cannot see it? Second theme, attention and observation. Here's a detail I love. The speaker goes to Mrs. Jones's garden. They talk about a flower for 15 odd minutes, and all the time the speaker is looking around for the flower, not down. Where is this lovely thing? They cry, and Mrs. Jones says, you're standing on it. The flower was there all along, tiny and delicate, right under the speaker's feet. How often do we miss what is right in front of us because we are looking too far ahead, or because we expect things to look a certain way? The third thing, the value of small things. Those little plants between the stones, they are delicate and small. They don't mean anything at all to the speaker. But to Mrs. Jones, they are worth a quarter hour of conversation. They are worth inviting a neighbor over. The poem gently suggests that maybe the smallest things hold the deepest meaning, if only we pay attention. Now friends, let's look at a couple of poetic devices, how the poem works. Let's look at how Akil creates these effects. Two devices stand out. Notice the repeated lines. My next door neighbor, Mrs. Jones, appears 3 times, and I told you this is called a refrain. It's like a friendly knock on the door. Each time it brings us back to her, grounding us in her presence. The refrain creates a rhythm, a comforting pattern, like walking through a garden path and returning to the same lovely spot. The second poetic device is irony, which means an unusual or unexpected part of a situation that seems strange or amusing. Poem builds towards a moment of beautiful irony. The speaker goes to see Mrs. Jones's garden, expecting to admire flowers, and there they stand and talk about a flower for 15 long minutes, probably looking around at all the stones, wondering where this famous flower could be. The dramatic irony: the flower was right there, beneath them the entire time. The speaker's own expectations created a blind spot. That's the kind of irony that makes us smile and also makes us think. How often do we miss the thing we are looking for? So now friends, your turn to dig in. We have spent time in Mrs. Jones's garden. Now I want you to create something inspired by her, your own Mrs. Jones. Think of someone in your life who finds beauty or meaning in some things that others overlook. Maybe a relative who collects something unusual like stamps or sand from different beaches. Maybe a friend who notices patterns in nature. Write a short poem or paragraph about them using the refrain structure Akil uses. Start with my next door neighbor, or my dear uncle, or my best friend. One more activity. Look down. Here's a challenge. For the next 5 minutes, go outside, look at the ground, really look. What do you see that you normally step over? A crack in the pavement with green moss growing, a tiny flower, a strange shaped stone. Write down 3 things that you noticed for the first time. So Mrs. Jones, with her stones and her tiny plants, teaches us something important. Beauty isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's small. Sometimes it's right under our feet. Sometimes the most interesting people are the ones who see world differently. So this week I challenge you, be a little more like Mrs. Jones. Look where others don't. Find the flower you are standing on. Thank you friends for being with me. I'll meet you soon with another poem, another story. Until then, read good poems. Namaskar.